how important Japan is. So again, welcome to the seminar, and I'll give the word to Ambassador Yamazaki.
Thank you very much.
Right. We can welcome him with a little applause.
Well, yes, thank you very much. Ambassador Barrier, thank you very much for this, giving me this opportunity to talk about Japan today. I see very good friends, familiar faces, fellow ambassadors, also members of the ISDP. So it's a great pleasure to really come here and talk about Japan. You know, there can be many things, I mean, one could be talking about. But today I thought, you know, since we have such a limited time, I think I will talk about first, you know, Japan's relationship with Sweden, because I'm in Sweden, and then expand a little bit more, and I think I will talk a little bit about you know, our relationship with EU, Europe as a whole, and then I think I'll talk about Japan's relationship with United States. I think United States continues to be a very, perhaps most important partner, ally for us. But I think it's also a very important country for everybody. So I think those are the things that I think I will touch upon, and I'm sure there are. I'm sure you might have many questions about what I say. I welcome them afterwards. Also, if you have questions about other topics related to Japan, but of course I will try to answer them if you so wish to raise questions. So if that's okay with you, I think I would like to start first by, okay, so our relationship with Sweden. You know, I've been here 1 year and 5 months. Sweden is a very important country for us. I mean, because I mean we share many values. We share many interests. Democracy, rule of law, human rights. Of course, we are physically a little bit far away, but I think we do have interests which overlap quite a bit. And so it's really a pleasure to be serving here in Sweden as an ambassador of Japan, meeting with Swedish colleagues, Swedish people, because I think we really are talking on the same wavelength, having common interests, can pursue many things together. So that's I think so, and I don't, you know, right now I don't think we have any real big outstanding issues between our two countries. So that's also a very good thing. I think it's we can do many things together. So and in that relationship, maybe, and I could talk about many things, but for today, one of the things I wanted to kind of highlight is this issue of empowering women. Japan, you know, right now, Prime Minister Abe, who has been in government for over 4 years now, has all along made it a very strong point in his government's policy of trying to further develop our country, which we have, I think, perhaps had quite a bit of, kind of quite a long time where our economy was not moving ahead in a very big way, and in an environment where our overall population is decreasing long term. That's the forecast, and also where society it's rapidly aging. So in that kind of environment, that's one thing, and also there are so much highly educated and very well qualified part of a segment of the population, which after a while they join the workforce. When they start a family, they don't necessarily come back to the workforce, where they were employed or somewhere else. I think the government, and I think many people in Japan feel that that's not a very good way of going about doing things. Also, I think it's important for the Japanese society that we reflect on many of the decision making, the viewpoints of half of the population. I think so. What Mr. Abe, Prime Minister, is doing is trying to bring in women, first of all, to retain the women who are already on the workforce, so that they can continue to be in the workforce. Also, moving these women to a decision-making role, so that we do have a good representation of women, both in the parliament, in government, in the private sector, in the academia. Those things this is not going to happen overnight, but I think we are continuing to push for that. And that, in thinking of that, we of course, we have to think about how we do that. And each and every country has its own history and its own culture and everything. So we have to think about how to do that. But also we do wish to look at various different societies, how they have been managing a similar kind of question in their own societies. And one of the things that I was told coming here as an ambassador is, yes, we do need to go to Sweden and see how Sweden has been tackling this issue. I've gone around and kind of listened to people, ask a lot of questions. I see that Sweden, of course, had a similar problem maybe one generation ago, but Sweden has come along quite a bit, but still, it's a dynamic process. It's something that I think our government continues to have a very keen interest, and so that's where it is. And I see that the current Swedish government makes a point that it is the first feminist government in the world, and that it is also pursues a feminist foreign policy. So it's very interesting. We try to see how things go, and what are some of the key things that perhaps we could learn. You can see that Mr. Abe initiated this World Assembly for Women in 2014. He had in 2014, 15, 16, where he invited many leading politicians, leading CEOs, academics around the world to come and talk about their experience. And he has not just made keynote speeches in these meetings, but he actually participated in many of the very breakout sessions to spend quite a bit of time to listen and interact with these people who came to Japan to really provide their knowledge. So that's an ongoing one issue I think I wanted to highlight today, especially in this context of Japan and Sweden. Another is that I wanted to highlight is this science and technology and innovation. Both Japan and Sweden attach great importance to innovation, like clean tech, ICT, life science, material sciences. I think both countries have a very strong history and a base for manufacturing and making changes and innovating that contributes to the overall advancement in the society. You see that, for example, down here, according to some of the measures, for example like taken by Thomson Reuters, there are certain rankings that they make based on certain indexes and all that. Japan comes up very up. Actually at the top. And Sweden really is also very near the top. Another index, global competitive index, Sweden and Japan is also at very close to the top. So we see that this is something both societies attach great importance. I think we want to continue to push to be a good innovators. Another thing I might also just point out is that the number of Nobel laureates in the natural sciences since 2001, there has been 14 Nobel laureates. Of course, the United States is by far number one, but Japan comes in as in second place. It's of course something that Japan maybe did 30 years ago, but I think we continue. It's at least in the mind of many Japanese. We want to continue to excel in many of the natural sciences. I think that's something that we want, and I think Sweden, of course, is also very attaches importance to this kind of basic research. So another thing that I wanted to talk about is next year, 2018, Japan and Sweden celebrates the 150th anniversary of the establishment of the diplomatic relations between Japan and Sweden. Since 1868, actually, it's the year that Japan opened up towards the outside world. Japan really rapidly developed after that, and so Sweden was one of the very first countries that Japan established relations. We have had a lot of mutual visits. Economic relations have developed. There has been a lot of cultural and economic exchanges, and I think we continue to want to make that relationship even further deeper. So, moving on to the EU relationship. About 2 weeks ago, Prime Minister Abe came to Europe. He visited Germany, France, EU Brussels, and Italy. And I think the message that we commonly shared, or what Japan tried to convey, was that we will continue to work closely with Europe and to maintain, strengthen rule-based international order, such as free trade and maritime security. I think free trade is a very important concept, that especially in this current world right now. I think Japan continues to see that as a very important element in various fields. Also, another message I think that from our side wanted to convey was that given the some of the planned elections in some member EU states, and with the start of the Brexit negotiations, we certainly hope for a discussion on future EU to be directed towards maintaining unity of Europe. I think for us, this is also in the interest of Japan, because we feel that a united Europe is very much and united Europe pursuing certain policies which are in unison with what our thinking is very much in the interest of Japan. So that's message. And another message that we also agreed with the EU side was that it's important to reach agreement with the EU on the fundamental elements of the economic partnership agreement which Japan and EU has been negotiating sometime now, but we should really try to come to agreement as early as possible on this. Another point is that a free and open economy forms the foundation for peace and prosperity, and it's very important that Japan, Europe, and the U.S. Are working together. I think what the message is, I think Japan and Europe needs to talk to each other very closely, and also be kind of talking with the United States as well, or drawing the United States into this whole discussion, so that we all can work together for this free and open economy. So that's something that we try to do. On the Brexit, maybe I should just say two things about Brexit. And this is also something that I think we have been conveying to both Brussels and London, and that is because Japan is not just an outsider observer, but rather, in a way, Japan is a player in this whole thing, because there are over 1,000 Japanese companies located in UK. Over 60,000 people, Japanese residents, are in UK. They are contributing to the UK economy, also to the EU economy. We feel that that kind of situation should continue. And so what we want is, we do want a maintenance of a certain unity in Europe. And also, in this whole discussion, the whole negotiation that has been started, we have all along said two things, basically: that business does not like unpredictable situations. We want to see as much predictability as possible, and secondly, we want to see, I mean, there is a certain period, of course, that is stipulated in this Article 50, but perhaps there might be a need for a transitional period, and so that kind of thing also needs to be worked out. I know that Prime Minister May stated a certain position. The EU side, I'm sure, is going to be also setting out its parameters or its negotiation positions. I guess I gather that it's going to be decided 29th or sometime, hopefully, later this month. But we will continue to follow the discussion very carefully, because, as I said, it really will affect quite a bit in big scale how Japanese companies operate in Europe. So that's for Europe. And then, if I may just move on to talk about the United States, our relationship with the United States. But just to say that normally we say that there are three pillars to Japan's foreign policy. And we say, first, strengthening the Japan-US alliance relationship. We have an alliance relationship with the United States. Also, number two, enhancing relations with neighboring countries, our neighboring countries. And also, number three, promoting economic diplomacy as a means of driving the growth of the Japanese economy. So, having said that, just if I may recap the very recent developments in the Japanese-US relationship. In November last year, Prime Minister Abe visited the United States. This is first, he visited quite immediately after the elections, but not yet become the president, so the president-elect. In then once the administration took office, Defense Secretary Mattis came to Japan on the beginning of February. It was his first official visit overseas, and he mentioned specifically about the Senkaku Islands. Maybe some of you already know about this, which definitely falls within our territory. But he reiterated once again the U.S. position and made it clear that it is countermanded with Japan-U.S. security treaty. And also, there was discussion about further strengthening the alliance. Then, beginning of February, Prime Minister Abe visited Washington and later on Florida to meet now the President of the United States. This was the first official visit to the United States by our Prime Minister under the new administration. They established a relationship of strong mutual trust through very direct discussions. They also affirmed strong determination to further strengthen Japan-U.S. alliance and the economic relationship. Regarding the Japanese-U.S. alliance, the unshakable, I'm basically quoting from the joint statement which was produced, and I'm sure you could find this in our homepages, but I'm just quoting from some of the key sentences. Regarding this alliance area, the unshakable U.S.-Japan alliance is the cornerstone of peace, prosperity, and freedom in the Asia-Pacific region. Another point is U.S. commitment to defend Japan through the full range of U.S. military capabilities, both nuclear and conventional, is unwavering. And amid an increasingly difficult security environment in the Asia-Pacific region, the U.S. will strengthen its presence in the region, and Japan will assume larger roles and responsibilities in the alliance. On the economic relations, they discuss the need to promote inclusive growth and prosperity in their countries, the Asia-Pacific region, and the world. They also emphasize that they remain fully committed to strengthening the economic relationships between their two countries and, of course, the region based on rules for free and fair trade. Also, they reaffirm the importance of both deepening their trade and investment relations and all their continued efforts in promoting trade, economic growth, and high standards throughout the Asia-Pacific region. So, also, in order to kind of move ahead on the economic front, the two sides agree that there should be an economic dialogue that we should enter. And from the Japanese side, it will be headed by Mr. Aso, who is the Deputy Prime Minister and also the Minister of Finance. And from the US side, it will be Vice President Pence. I'm not exactly sure the exact date will happen, but I think it's going to be happening quite soon. We should be kicking off on this kind of endeavor. And so I think what this outlines is that Japan and US has embarked on really right footing, towards maintaining and strengthening the bilateral relationship, and that we think will be beneficial to both countries as well as to the Asia-Pacific region and the world. So I think that's all I have on the slides. Yes, and I think there are many things that you probably want to talk about, and I know that of course Mr. Xi Jinping is meeting Mr. Trump in Washington, or not Washington, but in Florida. There are many things one can talk about, Europe, Asia, everywhere. But if you have questions, please do ask them. Yes.
Thank you very much. questions and comments, but let me start with one question. I think many of us have that question.
Yes.
The relationship between Japan and China. What is going to happen?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a very good question because China is first of all, it's a very important neighbor. I mean, we cannot just move to another neighborhood. It's a very important neighbor, and in the sense that first of all, I think we're very much interconnected economically. There's a huge, how should I say, or very close kind of value chain link that each of us, I think, are providing certain elements of production to each other in order to produce things. And which is beneficial to both countries. Of course, also there are many interaction of people. Nowadays, the tourists coming from China to Japan has really grown. Japan's inbound tourist numbers have grown really rapidly in recent times. We hope that these overall numbers will grow even more. But quite a percentage of that number is really coming from China. We welcome that. Also, there's interaction in the area of student exchange, scientific research, even cultural kind of interaction. I think that's great for both countries. We feel it is an important relationship, definitely a very important relationship. At the same time, there are things that, or maybe one should say that when you engage in a very dynamic and very wide scope, full scope kind of a relationship with any country, you have many issues or many areas that are covered in this relationship, and sometimes in some of these points, I think there are differences in the position, and I think we have to say that on some of the issues where there are differences or something that we from our side cannot just accept, we have to inevitably, I think we have to say something. Maybe they might have something to say, but actually tell what it is for what it is. And what for us, one of the things that I think China is doing, and I think we don't see as very correct, is a kind of a unilaterally through threat or use of force, kind of encroaching on our territorial borders or territorial areas. It's not very correct, and I think we have to kind of point that out. And so that is something I think whenever that happens, I think we will point that out, and we kind of just don't. But as I said, China is a very important neighbor. We will continue to strive for a good relationship with this important neighbor.
Thank you very much. Question? Ambassador?
Thank you very much for this presentation. It was very interesting. My question now, we see that there is a tension in this area, especially after the missile test by the North Korea. How do you predict the futures of this conflict, and how you predict the role of the next state with this regarding this?
Yeah, I mean, yes, North Korea is another very important topic in my region. It's, how should I say? I mean, after the last war, we have unfortunately not been able to arrive at a peace treaty with North Korea. there are quite a few outstanding issues, and I think we do need to resolve these issues. And one is the development of nuclear weaponry in North Korea, which we don't think is correct. We do want to see a denuclearized Korean Peninsula, meaning that they really should stop this development activity in the nuclear weaponry, missile technology. Also, we do have an issue of the abduction issue, where you might have heard, but in late 70s and maybe early 80s, quite some span of time, but actually we in Japan we in the beginning I think we could not understand, but people were disappearing from our territory, and it eventually through various information it became quite clear that North Korea utilizing various physical coming ashore on Japanese territory with small boats or submarines or whatever, actually just kidnapped people and brought them back to their own country. We're not exactly why they would do that, but very unfortunately these people were abducted. So our government has continued to convey, although we don't, of course, do not have a diplomatic relations with them, so we have to convey through various other channels about our concern and our demand that these people be returned. Unfortunately, this discussion has, to a certain extent, to a point, they engage, but then at a certain point they disengage. And so this is a very important, outstanding issue for us, continues to be an important issue for us. But coming back to the nuclear issue, this is something very worrisome for us. They have tested during last year two times nuclear tests, and also in terms of firing the missiles, they fired over 20 or whatever number, and it seems that they have advanced in capabilities in this area, which all along it has probably been covering the Japanese area, but now maybe they have a capability that will fly a certain missile trajectory to even further places, even perhaps might reach the United States. So this is something that we cannot just condone, and we have been saying that now at this very recent developments, we feel that things have gone on to a new stage of seriousness. We feel that one of the countries, or maybe one of the several countries that could have an impact on this whole discussion is China. So we have tried to approach or try to convey to China that China does need to approach this issue in a very serious manner. Also, another country that, of course, definitely has an impact is the United States. We have been discussing this matter with the United States as well as Republic of Korea. The three of us, Republic of Korea, Japan, and the United States, has been in very close cooperation or communication on this matter. We continue to feel that configuration is very important. But as I said, China is also a very important in this discussion. Of course, there can be many probably fora. One is of course Security Council at the United Nations. The Security Council has adopted actually towards the end of last year, November, a very strong resolution calling for a certain limit, of importing coal or other things. We feel that implementation of that resolution is very important. Deciding, first of all, deciding on these sanctions is important, but I think we also feel that the actual implementation of that sanctions is quite important. So I think that's one of the things. I think that I'm sure that hopefully, I think they will, Mr. Trump and Mr. Xi Jinping will touch upon it. And I think they are quite important players, as I said, in this whole issue.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we have a question over there, and then we'll take it from in this order. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I have three questions. First, regarding the empowerment of women, where you said that Japan wants to improve women's position in society. My question with regard to this is that even if the government implements measures to change some situation, it's always difficult to change attitudes in society, preventing a solution to an issue. So I would like to comment on that, since Japan is affected by Confucian values. Secondly,
Could I ask you to just keep it to one question and
Yes.
then maybe come back so we give
Yes.
time for others to
Yes.
work. So we'll keep it at that.
Can I maybe respond to that?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think what you're saying about setting norms and that's one thing, and then the actual practice or what I think what you're saying is really changing the mindset of the people is yes, I agree that it is two things, and I think this whole issue has to be approached in a quite a comprehensive and multi-pronged way, and meaning that of course you have to tackle first of all the many of the rules governing the work hours, what are the workplaces rules, and also actually physical things. For example, like making sure that if women wish to work and also have a family, I think it's quite important that you do have to have a nursery or a childcare facility, not just have a physical facility, but also people who are really capable of taking care of the children, paying them at a fairly good salary. That kind of thing, of course, has to be there. And what you spoke about, which is the changing of the mindset in both men and women. So all these things also have to really happen in conjunction with work together. And I think you're right in that the changing of the mindset is probably the most difficult part. And I think that is not going to happen overnight. And I think this is something that we have to kind of persevere and also be consistent in pushing for that, and everybody coming to understand that this is in the benefit of the overall society. I think so. You're very right, and that you have to have a comprehensive kind of an approach and a consistent kind of approach.
Thank you. And then your neighbor.
Thank you, Yamazaki-san. One of your earlier slides stated that Japan would be willing to shoulder increased burdens within the alliance with the United States. What does that entail in practice?
Well, I think it's not just the burden. I think it's the. Maybe we can go back. So Japan assuming larger roles and responsibilities in alliance. I think that's what you're talking about. And I think it's really kind of looking at you know, talking with the United States about what exactly, how can the two work better together. I think that's one thing that definitely in terms of the defense area. What does it entail? And it's not just an issue of just putting money in certain things, but I think you really have to, also putting money is very important, but you really have to figure out what are kind of ways that two can really work together to face certain threats or whatever situation surrounding Japan and in the larger vicinity of Japan. So I think it's probably an issue of both money and also an issue of really thinking through many of the possibilities that one, and also thinking about what it is that Japan can reasonably capable to be doing. I think that's my answer to what you're saying.
Thank you. I think we have many questions. I think you had a question, then we'll move to you, and then Ambassador of Lithuania, and then continue. So please, and keep the questions short if you can.
Thank you, Ambassador. Very interesting thing, and it's a connection to what you have said on the U.S. relationship, that is the hang-on discussion. We all know that the Obama administration had a tendency, at least as seen from the EU side, to move a geopolitical shift from Atlantic to maybe a Pacific type of approach. That is at least how we saw it. Maybe it was so that the relationship between the US and the EU was considered so strong, so it didn't need to have sort of need of explanations but the distinct increased interest in the Pacific region was obvious. And now we know that in the presidential campaigns, but also afterwards, the signals has been sort of ambivalent with regard to the specificness of the geopolitical view of the US. Especially the new administration has sent various signals. Are you in the position as very early entering discussions with the new administration to say something on this indicative withdrawal or seeming withdrawal from the Pacificness of the earlier administration? Or do you think that you have that in attention? The attention now from your side is that you feel secure in what you have gotten as measures, and we have seen on your nice points.
Well, as I said, in what I think as I said, I think we this was our first initial encounter with the president by our prime minister, but initial encounter being quite an extensive one, and I think they really apparently had a good chemistry, and also were able to spend quite a bit of time together talking about quite all sorts of things. I mean, we're not exactly privy to every bit of what they talked about, but my sense is that my prime minister was able to provide early on in Mr. Trump's presidency about at least were able to provide an input of Japan's overall perspective on many things after being a prime minister for 4 years, which with Madame Merkel is amongst maybe at least if one talks about amongst the G7 configuration, maybe you're one of the more older or the longer, kind of being around the block. So at least, and also I think it's important that we were able to provide a perspective from a kind of a Pacific or Asia Pacific, and what Japan is thinking about vis-a-vis the United States or Europe or most all over the world on many issues. So, I think for as a start, as a beginning first shot or beginning, I think we, as I said, we started on the right footing. But as any relationship, I think it's always a dynamic relationship. One has to always kind of have a continuous kind of talk. I think the Prime Minister is saying that he agreed with Mr. Trump that whenever they meet each other in different multilateral forums like the G7 or the G20 or they can meet at the APEX, leaders meeting or whatever, that in these kind of times they go to different places, but if they are in the same town, why don't we meet each other, even if it's a 15-minute or something? So I think that's a good sign. And also the both, for example, like this morning in Tokyo, apparently Mr. Abe called Mr. Trump just right before he meeting Xi Jinping to talk about the recent developments. And so I think they are maintaining a good relationship so far, and we do have the ear of the president. I don't, and also I think regarding Europe also, I think it's very important that the United States and Europe has a good relationship. Because I think Europe continues to be a very important player in this world affairs, and Europe certainly, I think, as an entity, this EU is very important for us too.
Thank you. We have questions there.
It is when it's not so sure what Mr. Trump wants to do or what he can achieve in what he promised. But one thing he has consistent direction, and it is in the economy. He is not of global alliance in the economy too. So one can agree, I think, without too big a risk that United States is heading towards protectionism. Whereas Europe is still the champion of globalization, and with the coming elections in France and in Germany, most probably this will go on. Europe, when the United States is withdrawing from globalization, Europe needs more additional partners. One natural partner is Japan, and it seems vice versa, because your Prime Minister visited Europe. But this is on basis of globalization. So my question is that can Japan take two parallel lines which contradict itself in some way? And if you cannot go on in parallel, what is the bottom line? Japan is going to say that we sacrifice Europe or we sacrifice the United States? What is your thinking?
Well, I think it's probably not a parallel or track or something as you say. It's because what I wanted to say is when Mr. Abe went to the United States to talk with Mr. Trump, one of the really strong and repeated message that Mr. Abe tried to convey to Mr. Trump is that we are for open and free trade, free and open economy. And I think, you know, we're not saying, you know, that I don't think we have, you know, kind of given up on that kind of thinking. I think that's Misab is quite strong in kind of repeatedly saying that in all vis-a-vis all, you know, partners, including the United States. Of course, we see this you know, trying to come to agreement as rapidly as possible on EPA with Europe, with EU. It is very important, as you said, you know, and we certainly hope there's a very great chance that we will do that. I think it's mutually felt feeling, and Mr. Tusk and Mr. Juncker are very much in that along those lines. But I think that doesn't mean that we're going to alienate the United States. Rather, I think we have to continue together with Europe to try to pull the United States to a kind of recognition or certain position where, you know, that the United States also sees certain merit in dealing in this kind of arrangements. You know, it's not a one or the other kind of question. I think we have to continue to maintain that position of open and free economy. And I think that's our basic position.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for the very interesting expose. I have a question regarding Japanese relations with another big neighbor, Russia. Is there any positive developments in recent times concerning northern territories? And another short question, what is the position of Japanese government concerning situation around Ukraine, Eastern Ukraine and Crimea?
Yes, well, thank you very much for the question. Yes, Russia is also another important neighbor for us, also a very important neighbor for Europe as well, on both sides. Regarding our bilateral relationship with Russia, here again, we don't have a peace treaty yet after the last war. And one of the outstanding issues is the northern territories that we definitely feel is our territory. So that has been a sticking point. We have continuously been discussing this with the Russian side over many years. Recently, Mr. Putin came to Japan in last year, and they, both Japan and Russia, agree that there should be a economic development of these on the northern territories based on a special kind of an economic regime, which does not the special regime meaning that it does not negate the position either for us, the position that this is our territory, and so it's probably unprecedented kind of a regime that has to be found, and I think that discussion it's a kind of a follow-up discussion after that visit is taking place. I think the initial round of that took place very recently. I don't think we have come to an agreement on that. But unless we can find that kind of, at least for us, acceptable kind of a regime, but we hope that we can find something. On the Ukraine, we continue to, together with the other G7 countries and all that, continue to see all along have maintained. This is a serious issue that that we cannot just condone, and I think we have to see a certain reverting to certain positions that then I think we have been that hasn't changed.
Thank you. Have a question there?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I would like to echo Mr. Inkunas. Thank you as a representative of the country who really supported for all our former Soviet republics in the first stage of our statehood, and Georgia, of course, was one of them. And coming to the topic of the seminar, that Japan is a global actor, and I would like to agree with it fully, and I explain why. 20 years ago, there were some let's say, unofficial talks regarding the UN Security Council changes, more precisely, the enlargement of the permanent members. And if I'm not wrong, there were some countries named, and among them were Japan and Germany. For example, Georgia, on internal talks, we were in favor of such solutions. What is now the approach of Japan to UN? Because from our perspective, UN kindly exhausted its role in the World War, in, let's say, setting the new world order, as we say. And what is your approach about UN? And in case if UN, let's say, survives and continues its existence, how do you think about coming back 20 years ago, raised the question about enlargement and the role of Japan as a permanent member of Security Council?
Yes, well, thank you very much for the question. I guess your question is really about how we perceive the United Nations, first of all, and then I think your second question was about this whole issue of the Security Council reform. About the United Nations itself, I think we continue to attach importance to this body with 193 member states. We are one of the member states, and I think we celebrated last year 60th anniversary of joining the United Nations. We joined in 1956. We continue to see that this is an important body. I mean, you don't have anything like it outside of the United Nations, and it is, I think, every kind of security arrangements or these things are, of course, have the United Nations in mind, the Security Council. But also, the United Nations has other roles to play outside the Security Council as well. I mean, in a way, how should I say, it kind of sets the overall direction of and gives legitimacy to a world view on various issues. I think it has played a role in doing that. I think we do see value in that, and we continue to feel that it is something that we want to support. Regarding Security Council reform, I think we, as you mentioned, we have been pushing for a reform where Japan would hopefully come become a permanent member. We continue to have a configuration called G4 together with Germany, Brazil, and India. I think, but I think we also we do need to work with other member states to have this whole discussion. And there is a discussion in the General Assembly, kind of a configuration where this is discussed. And I think we attach importance to that discussion moving forward. I think we continue to attach quite importance so that this discussion can move forward in a meaningful way.
Thank you. Shall we wait? You had a question? Okay. Okay, in that case, I think you had two more questions.
Very brief. First, it came to my knowledge before this year that China had changed the periodization of the Japanese warfare from not 1937 to 45, but 31 to 45. was said that this would perhaps aggravate relations between Japan and China. Can you comment on this, the redefinition of the period of the second senior Japanese war, not from 37 but from 31 to 45?
Well,
And the second one is very hypothetical. North Korea sends out its missiles in the sea close to Japan, and if it would hit the Japanese cities, killing people, what would be the responsible for Japan in that case?
well, I mean, just to respond to you on the second question, it is a very hypothetical question, and I cannot really give you a good answer to that. But it will be very, very serious, and we cannot just stand alone and say that this is something that is acceptable. It will be totally unacceptable. So, but I cannot say what because it is a hypothetical question. On the first point, I think regarding the history of how to interpret the history, maybe at the end of the day, the historians of both Japan and China, there have been attempts actually, and there have been exercises to jointly go over these things. But I think it's probably best to, if you want to talk about history, to let the historians make their judgments on these things, because I think we do have to recognize that the relationship is a current and also a future one, and we have to think about the relationship that is beneficial to all, also meaning that for the current generation, but also for the future generations as well. I mean, I think we have to make certain value judgments. We have to make certain decisions, and cognizant of what transpired in the past, of course. But at the same time, I think we have to always be thinking about the future. Otherwise, it's not very productive, I think, for many people. So that's my response to what you say.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this will be the last question.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thanks, Ambassador, for your presentation. There was some discussion earlier about, my name is Jonathan Kennard, the Australian Ambassador. Discussion earlier about US engagement in Asia, whether there's a pivot to Asia that might have been characteristic of the Obama administration and a withdrawal from that. I'm more interested in how you see Europe's relationship with Asia. How do you think, is Europe sufficiently engaged in some of the key issues, strategic issues and others that are taking place? For example, South China Sea issues, East China Sea issues. How is Europe perceived more generally in Asia, including in ASEAN forums? And if there's not sufficient sort of profile and engagement by Europe, what would be the mechanisms for enhancing that relationship, the Asia-Europe relationship?
Well, thank you very much for the question. From a fellow neighbor from where I come from. Yeah, it's a good question, and I think all along Europe, of course, has had interest in Asia, but I think how should I say? It's we see that Europe or EU has a kind of global strategy. It has it's not just thinking about what's happening in Europe or its vicinity, but also have a little bit more extended view in terms of the geography. I think we very much welcome that kind of outlook. We want to encourage that kind of outlook because what happens in Asia definitely has an impact on Europe as well as many parts of the world. it is actually one of my big tasks to now being stationed in Stockholm to always kind of talk about my country, but also about Asia to the Swedish public, people, all kind of people, and perhaps beyond who might have interest about Asia, because I think it's in mutual interest that Europe has interest in Asia, and that Asia, of course, has interest in Europe. Although we are physically perhaps a little bit far away. In terms of actual how do you bring that into implementation part? I think that's there can be probably many ways to do it, and maybe I'm sure you yourself might have a view on that, and but since you might want to talk about it, but I think many of the Asian actors, I think, are interested in Europe being involved in Asia, and definitely, at least I can say for my country, we are very much pro that kind of approach. So, and European countries. So I continue to maintain and kind of talk about it in those terms. Thank you very much.
So that was the last question. Is there any very last question? If not, I would like to thank also a gift from ISDP.
Wow.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you all for attending. This seminar will be put on the video will be on the homepage, so you can actually go back to it. And if you didn't take notes, you can take notes from the video. But I thank you all for coming. We will have more seminars and workshops on Japan in the future. Our ambition is to have it perhaps even as much as once a month or once every 1.5 months or so. So we will come back with invitations in the future. Thank you very much for coming and attending.
So I can say thank you very much, Ambassador Barrier, for this very important initiative, and I think we want to continue to support your efforts. And once again, thank you very much for inviting me today.
So good. Thank you.